I'll just kind of quickly repeat everything, assuming that y'all couldn't really hear too well. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach two different techniques, and then we're going to merge them. So the first technique I'm going to teach is feel rest, like the Shinzen technique of feel rest. And then I'm going to talk about inquiry. And then what we're going to simply do is we're going to bring inquiry and feel rest together in the inquiry of what is rest. So again, first we're starting out with feel rest. So in feel rest, you know, most of you are sufficiently familiar with Shinzen systems. There's like see, hear, and feel, right? So in the feel rest, we're going to focus on the feeling aspect. Okay, that's all good and well. But what is rest? So rest is relative disactivation. It's the relative stillness, right? And then so the way that I was trying to explain this earlier was look at, so like feel your right femur, the big bone in your right thigh. So bring your attention to that. And for me, there's no activation there. Just nothing's happening. And it's really restful. And then let's like look over at the other end of the continuum. So take your right fist and flex it. Really tense your right fist as hard as you can. And then notice how much is going on. That's like really, really active. And now release it. And there's still all this activation. And then through contrast, now look at your right femur, your right thigh bone one more time. And so this lack of activation, this is rest. Okay, good. Now, why would we want to do this? So the more we sensitize ourselves to rest, relaxation, the easier we can call it up in our experience, the more available it is. Also, I think that there's a clear relationship between equanimity and rest. Like equanimity is the ability to rest, like to lean into and rest into what's happening if it's kind of a little bit difficult. That's one aspect of equanimity. Also, I think it's interesting from a sensory clarity point of view. Shinzen talks about the kind of three pillars of mindfulness of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. I think it's very interesting from a sensory clarity point of view because rest is so subtle. In a sense, there's nothing subtler than rest. Or if you want to put it another way, there's nothing subtler than the absence of experience. And so absolute rest is the absolute absence of experience. And so if you can follow that, like you follow experience as it's kind of departing and then goes away, that's cessation, that's nirodha, that's nothing, that's emptiness. And so when you see that, you know, hundreds of times, or etc., then you really start the insight of no self, emptiness, impersonality, etc., starts kind of ingraining. And you come into conformity with emptiness. And then life gets easier, more bouncy, not such a big problem. Okay, when would you want to do this? Do it all the time, really. You know, it's cool to do this in bed. So just like start tuning into rest, start tuning into what's not active. It really helps to induce sleep, etc. When you're stressed, do rest as a trigger practice. So you know you're all tensing. It's like, oh, can I like lean into and rest into this activation? And then you watch it with a sense of curiosity dissolve. What should you watch out for? Sometimes when you rest into something, it can really bring up a lot of triggers and a lot of discomfort because what we're resting part of what we're resting is actually the defense mechanisms. And this is really important. The defense mechanisms, they've gotten you this far, and it's important. And you shouldn't denigrate or push away your defense mechanisms. We need them. And when they get paused and disabled, they generally, abandonment, terror, all this stuff comes up, and it's got to be dealt with. And so you want to be really sweet and gentle with yourself. Hey, Tom, you raised your hand. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so I've done some other rest practices in Shinzen style. And one thing that's come up for me is the difference between absolute rest or rest and unconsciousness.
Oh, yeah.
I find it very easy to drift into unconsciousness. And is that an aspect of rest? Should we differentiate that from rest?
Yes, this is a good question. Okay, so you're saying, what's the difference between rest or absolute rest and unconsciousness? And I think that I'm not sure how to answer this. So first, you should take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm not sure. But what's coming up for me is like the difference between rest and dissociation. Like there is this kind of numbing out, and it has this quality of dullness, and it's like, it's like low energy, not vibrant, dull, and it feels ignorant. And it also feels mildly disquieting. That's this kind of dissociation. Whereas this kind of watching the system shut down and letting it shut down has this quality of vibrancy and like what's happening. Now you can't put words to it, but what's happening, and then it's kind of refreshing, and you feel refreshed after you come out of it. That's just what's coming up. Do you feel that that's speaking to your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't have the exact distinction yet, but okay. I do get what you're getting at, I think.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing about generally the spiritual path and also about meditation is that the whole thing is an equanimity practice. Like much of meditation is, and this is like most clearly, let's say, put forth in Zen, is like, here are some extremely shit instructions. Sit there and just, be really confused for the next 3 years. And then as you sit there in the confusion, you just start opening to it because you just can't manage like that high level of frustration. And you're just like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to accept that I don't know. And then that's really when things start changing and settling. Now, with that said, the Zen approach works, but you can also explain, hey, this is an equanimity practice. You're going to not know. You're going to be sitting there not knowing, and that's a feature. It's not a bug.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Something that I found working with the rest practices is like my mind, or maybe everyone's mind, but definitely mine, has like an inherent bias towards experiences that are negative and experiences that are very strong. So it's like when I was meditating for many years, I would just always be stuck on the strongest, most negative aspect of my experience that was going on. And then learning to focus on positive was extremely healing of the tendency to only notice what's going on that's negative. And then learning to focus on rest was extremely healing to the tendency to focus on what's strongest. Because at any moment, there's like an infinite sphere of nothingness happening that you can focus on. And there's also things that are going on. But it's still with mindfulness. It's still with, investigation and really connecting with and feeling with it. And it just kind of allows you to be in your whole sphere of experience as opposed to just being stuck on the strongest, most negative part of your experience.
Totally. And you can see how it makes perfect sense that we notice what's active, right? And like noticing what's inactive is totally counterintuitive. But by doing that, we actually learn the skill of rest. And so then you actually have like voluntary rest more so at your disposal.
Yeah, and in my practice, it was like something's wrong because I'm not feeling anything, and now I'm like, oh, it's just rest is there. I'm feeling a thing that is rest, and that's actually a positive thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, I'm going to read Adrian's comment. So in rest, do you go into the location of the body with the least sensation, the femur, etc.? That would be one way to do it. When I do it, I just kind of like take like a whole global like view and just like let everything arise, and then the activation, I kind of like see the activation as like empty and kind of coming up out of nothing and returning back into nothing, and then that knowledge induces rest for me. But especially as a sensitizing exercise, like putting your attention where there's not much happening works. So you could do it like a body scan, like, you know, feet, legs, torso, head, and then just check out where nothing's happening. So that would be a good way to do it, Adrian. Okay, cool. I'll jump back in. So, alrighty. Okay, so that's actually it for the technically like the feel rest portion of the lecture. Now I'm going to talk about inquiry, and then we're going to combine the two. So, okay, what is inquiry? Inquiry is a tool for managing and holding attention and awareness. It is a cue, much like in weightlifting, you know, you just go up to the bar and then you like go reach for it, and then all of a sudden your body knows what to do, and then boom, you're doing the deadlift, you're doing the whatever, and it just happens. So like in here, we'll try it right now. And this is always, for some reason, this is always the example I use. What did you have for breakfast? Now think and open up your mind. But then when you have the content, don't touch it. Don't touch the content. So before you get to the bagel release. so it's like, what did you have for breakfast? But just stay in the open what part. So in a sense, like inquiry is like the first half of the question. It's this way of like bringing you to presence, opening you up to possibility, but then you don't go all the way to like clamping down on the answer. And so whenever you find the answer, you ask the question again, what is that? Or who am I? Whatever inquiry that you're using. Okay, cool. Let me go back. Another thing is, another aspect of it is questions scrutinize. And see, this is the more the Vipassana end of it. You know, you're looking into, you're inquiring, you're investigating. And then whenever we inquire or investigate anything, nothing is what arises, because nothing can be grasped. Nothing really stands up under that scrutiny. And then this again shows us insubstantiality, shows us emptiness. Also, just to do this process, this iterative process, this recursive process, trains the mind to quit thinking compulsively. And this is very important. So the ability to think and use thinking as a tool remains. But the compulsive nature of thought is, it starts unwinding when you do a lot of inquiry, because you keep asking the question and you keep not grasping. And then the grasping to the answer is what reinforces the compulsive thought loop. So you ask, and you never find. And then the conceptual mind starts relaxing because it's not getting anywhere. Also, as to how you go ahead. There was a question?
Is the inquiry similar to don't know mind?
Yes, definitely. Inquiry produces don't know mind, because you're staying in the question and in the not knowing. And then whenever you find the answer, you say, like, you know, with self-inquiry, you'd say, who's having this thought? To whom is this an answer? Now, with this inquiry, the inquiry that I like to kind of, when I find the answer, the answer to what is rest, I say, can I rest into this? So can I release this answer? And then you're back into don't know mind. Okay, good. So that's actually it for the inquiry, like what is inquiry and how to go about it. And now I want to talk about effort and letting go of effort. I think there's a lot of confusion around effort, and I think maybe it was in last class or maybe it was with a student, I forget. We were talking a lot about effort. And again, I think effort is not, in a sense, not well understood. There's a lot of confusion. Like effort is great. We should apply effort. Ajahn Jayasaro says that Buddhism is a training on effort. Buddhism it trains you how to exert yourself. But there's times for efforts and there's time for relaxing effort. And this practice is going to be heavy on the relaxing effort. But where I think that people get really dogmatic and narrow-minded, and you see this more in the whole Advaita Vedanta movement. You're like, oh, you got to give up the search. It's highly problematic if you keep efforting. No. You should effort. And you should effort so much that you get burned out with it. And then you should try not efforting. And you should explore both. And it's all about like keeping this like fluid, openness towards your experience, and then sensitizing yourself to when is effort useful and when is it more useful and more profitable to relax effort. And so, and I like to say that I like to call effort the koan of effort. Like effort is an inquiry in and of itself. We don't quite know, and we're always adjusting it. And there should be a kind of light curiosity around effort itself. So, and then also let me say that especially at the beginning of practice, we need more effort. And as we get more expert at practice, we need less and less. And I'll say that when we start letting effort recede and like kind of resting into things, we're kind of opening up to the boundlessness of consciousness. And like there's a part of you that needs to get out of the way for something else to come to the forefront. And that's what we're doing here. So when we encourage certain parts of experience to relax and rest, then we make room for the self-organizing, dynamic, spacious nature of consciousness to arise and do its thing. Also, this, and was there a question? Sorry.
Yeah, hi Cedric.
Hey Hans.
Yeah, just to, I guess, reiterate what you said, but I'm wondering if I got it fully. But it has been my experience that effort is very useful in kind of the absence of experience of what a particular skillful means could be to handle a certain situation. So let's say you're struggling with dullness, then if you're following the Mind Illuminated, then there are certain skillful means of tackling that dullness. And at some point, I noticed myself becoming more and more familiar with those skillful means and being able to just overcome some forms of dullness just by intending to overcome them. But I think before I developed that, effort was a good kind of antidote kind of in the meantime. So it does seem to me that effort in the end, as like a fourth path, fully enlightened being, probably there won't be any effort in meditation or life whatsoever. But before that, let's say fully at the start, there's probably a lot of effort. And then I think it decreases over time until you probably find some new obstacle where you need it again. I'm wondering if this has been your experience as well, and if you had anything to add to that.
Definitely. And I think this is kind of, like, I think it's almost irresponsible when these like kind of Advaita Vedanta types give like practices of no effort to like beginners. Because if you're a beginner and you've done no mind training, there's like a 95% chance you're just going to sit there in mind wandering. Now, okay, if you're at a Zen retreat there's a certain point that you're going to be so exhausted that you just give up. And then that actually might be useful. So that, again, if you have like 20 days of forced silence, maybe, okay, yeah, sure. But otherwise, I think it's terrible advice at the beginning. And then definitely as you go, see, also at the beginning of practice, it's tough. It's really difficult. But the further you get in practice, the easier it is. And so the easier and more enjoyable and the more of a natural refuge the practice is, the more you can release into the fact that it's enjoyable. And then once it's enjoyable, there's no effort. Good, good, good. Okay, cool. Okay, so all right, combining it all. So the inquiry that we're going to use is what is rest? And also, if that's not resonating for you, just do the feel rest technique where you just note rest, rest, rest in the body or in the emotional body. So those are going to be our two practice options. And then when you kind of find something, so when you find an answer to the question of what is rest, the follow-up question that I use is, can I rest into this? Meaning, can I let go? And to be clear, we don't know where we're going here. We don't know how this is going to turn out. We want to rest into that. We're getting more and more comfortable with don't know mind, with uncertainty. So what should we watch out for? Okay, this can get weird. It's very, and I know that there's some people on the call that have experience with inquiry, and most of the time when you're doing inquiry, it's like, this is not working, this is not doing anything, this is a big waste of time. If that's your experience, you're probably doing it right. Okay. So don't expect that you're going to know what's happening or that you're in control or that you're making sense of it. The quality of easing into the, oh shit, I can't make sense of my experience, that is it. Okay. And then very briefly, I want to make a couple of comments about corruptions of insight, because I said I was going to mention it in the course description. And then we'll get into the actual what is rest practice. So I think some corruptions of insight are like, first off, these are all just, I think, very obvious, like getting identified with no self, getting identified with emptiness, thinking that you have it, that you've grasped it. And the way I like to think about no self, emptiness, and in fact, the entirety of the practice is that it's process. So I like to think about emptiness not as a thing, rather as the process of emptying. So what you do is you realize emptiness through emptying yourself of the thing that you're holding on to. So you know the answer that you have right now or that you have in some moment, like we empty ourselves of that and we let it go. That's emptiness. We kind of let it flow. We let it turn from thing into process. So from particle into wave. That's kind of what emptiness is. That's one way of looking at it. Another thing, to directly contradict myself, because I was saying, oh, we think we got it, right? And you want to let go of that. Also, don't think that you don't have it. Like a lot of the times in the practice, we convince ourselves like, oh, I'm not getting it. And the insights are in the future. No, we've all had experience of no self, of emptiness, of impermanence. We all know suffering. The cardinal insights, we're having them all the time. And so open up to, yes, this really is it. And so don't put off your practice that, oh, I'll be awake one day. No, on some level, there's awakening now. And you want to open to whatever level of awakening there is for you right now. We already talked about this a little bit with Tom's question, but you can use the practice to dissociate. And just stay attentive to that and and try not to fall into this kind of dull, dissociated state. And again, the practice is about courage. In many ways, I think about meditation as a relaxing of the defense mechanisms. And then if we're not ready for what's going to come up, the defense mechanisms adapt, and then they use the meditation as a defense mechanism, which I don't think I'm explaining very well, but just be aware of all that. And then to that point, don't vilify what is outside of the practice. It's really important to not vilify your defilements or your defense mechanisms. They're what have gotten you this far, and they're actually all a part of creation. They're all a part of, the universe arising as it is, and it all needs to be kind of opened up to sweetly.